An uncertain economic outlook, with some projecting the world may dip into a fresh recession. So what does this mean for business and some of the world's biggest oil firms? Well, joining me now, the CEO of Brazil's Petrobras, Jose Sergio Gabrielli. Thanks very much for being with me. Now, with the world concerned about the economic outlook, what are your demand projections for 2012?
Well, we think that the world is going to continue to increase consumption of oil products, but we are going to see the continuing trend that we saw in the last 5 years, which is a reduction on consumption of oil products in Europe, a reduction of consumption of oil products in the US, a reduction of consumption of oil products in Japan, and an increase in consumption of oil products in China, India, South America, Africa, the emerging countries.
Okay, let's call those rapidly developing economies.
Yes.
How much of an increase in demand do you see there?
Well, last 5 years we have an increase between 4 and 5 million barrels a day. We expect by next year that we are going to have growth around 3% of the international market.
Okay, also in terms of China, a huge market obviously, how much do you think you can export to China over the coming year or so?
We have a contract with China for 10 years. We can export up to 200,000 barrels a day, which is around 10% of our current production in Brazil. We are going to increase our production. We are going to produce twice as much in 2015 and almost 5 million barrels a day by 2020, which means that we are going to be much more bigger exporter. Today we export pretty much the same amount to China and to the USA.
It doesn't sound like you're too concerned about a global recession, but with China showing some signs of its economy slowing, do you think those projections could change at all?
No, because the changing projection for China is from 9.2 growth to 9.1 growth, which is still a very big growth. We are not expecting that the emerging countries are going to stop growing. It's going to be a slower growth for sure, but not a recession. I think the recession is localized today more precisely in European countries. In the US, there are some signs of recovery, very slow recovery. In Japan, it's stable as always in the last 10 years.
Also, you've had some new oil discoveries recently. Is that going to affect how much you produce in the coming years? You've been citing exports of 4 million barrels a day by the year 2015. Do you think you could increase that?
Well, export, no. We have been producing 4 million barrels a day, 3.9 million barrels a day by 2015. But the Brazilian market is very big. We consume today 2.2 million barrels a day in Brazil. And we project a growth of Brazilian economy that's going to be increasing the consumption from 2 million barrels a day to 3 million barrels a day, which means that we are going to be exporting around 1.5, 1.6 million barrels a day.
Any more increase that you could see from your current projections? You sound like you're pretty much on track with what you have planned. Is there anything out there that could change these projections?
We are pretty much on track, but the biggest, I would say, challenge that we have is the speed of the construction of a new capacity of the supply chain. We need a lot of vessels, we need a lot of floating systems, we need a lot of drilling rigs, we need a lot of wet Christmas trees, we need a lot of big turbo compressors, we need a lot of pipelines, we need a lot of umbilicals, we need a lot of risers, and this has a constraint in the growth of the market.
I'd like to get your view on crude oil prices next year. Do you think we can average around $100 a barrel, or what do you see?
We work with a long-term view of a range between $80 and $95 per barrel in the long run. It's not that we projected this number, but we analyze the economics of our projects in this range. I don't see why the prices are going to be declining, because we have only to cope with the natural decline rate of the current production, we need to add in the next 10 years around 14 million barrels a day of new production. If you consider that the growth of the emerging market is going to be around 3-4% in the global scale, this means that we are going to need probably between 45 and 65 million barrels of new production coming on stream in the next 10 years, which means that we don't forecast why the prices are going to be falling.
A quick final question. From where you sit right now, what is your major concern in terms of the oil markets and production?
The capacity of the supply chain to provide goods and services on budget and on time.
Well, we'll see how that develops. And thanks very much for joining me, Jose Sergio Gabrielli of Petrobras, the CEO of Petrobras, joining me here in Singapore. I'm Tara Joseph. This is Reuters.